Hello everybody, welcome to the third and final part of my bookshelf tour. We are in my bedroom this time. I don't know if I've ever filmed in my bedroom before. It feels very weird. So we're going to start this part off with this small bookcase that's kind of behind my door over here. This is where I keep all of my books by Ursula K. Le Guin and Diana Wynne Jones. I have a lot of books by both of them. They're kind of special authors and they happen to fit perfectly on this small bookshelf. So I'm going to do these and then we're going to move back into my office for my TBR, my unread books, and my reference books. These books are not in any particular order, by the way. I just sort of threw them on the shelves and I haven't cleaned them up and organized them yet. And that was like 6 months ago. So let's begin with this book. This is the Illustrated Books of Earthsea edition from Saga Press. It is illustrated by Charles Vess and it contains all of the Earthsea novels and all of the shorter pieces set in the world. This is probably the book I've gotten the most questions about. People see it and want to know what it is. It is a very striking book and it's very well put together. It's extremely heavy though, so I think it's kind of like the pretty collector's edition to admire, look at the illustrations, but if you actually want to read the books, it's probably too heavy to hold for a long time. I know I would get tired of holding it, but it is very, very beautiful. These are the end papers. It's really beautiful. All the illustrations inside are black and white except for a couple in full color. I have a second set of the Earthsea novels in the 2012 Graphia editions from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. So this is A Wizard of Earthsea, The Tombs of Atuan, The Farthest Shore, Tehanu, which used to be my least favorite of the Earthsea novels, and then when I reread it as an adult, it instantly became my most favorite. Tales from Earthsea, and The Other Wind. So this is Catwings. Then we have Catwings Return, Wonderful Alexander and the Catwings, and the fourth one, Jane on Her Own. Then for the Hainish novels, we have The Left Hand of Darkness, The Dispossessed, Worlds of Exile and Illusion. This contains the first three Hainish novels, City of Illusions, Planet of Exile, and Rockinen's World. And The Telling. I cannot remember the name of this series, but it's a fantasy series. The first book is Gifts, the second is Voices, and the third is Powers. Changing Planes is a short story collection, and this may be the most hideous cover I own. It is laughably bad. The Wild Girls. Then there is The Beginning Place, which so far I would say this is the only bad book that Le Guin wrote. I mean, it's not completely irredeemable. It's just not that good. I have the 2-volume set of The Unreal and the Real from Small Beer Press. Volume 1 is called Where on Earth, and the second volume is called Outer Space, Inner Lands. I particularly love the covers of these Small Beer Press editions. I know that there's also a 2-volume set in the UK which has a completely different cover, and of course there's a single volume edition of this out from Saga Press, I think. I don't own that one, but I may get it because, as you might be able to tell, I let myself own multiple editions of Le Guin's books. I went to all the pretty things. Words Are My Matter is a collection of essays from 2000 to 2016, and I have 2 of her poetry collections. The first one is Finding My Elegy, New and Selected Poems, and her last one, So Far So Good. Some more story collections: A Fisherman of the Inland Sea, 4 Ways to Forgiveness, Orsinian Tales, Unlocking the Air. And I have this small mass market paperback edition of The Wind's 12 Quarters. My friend Andrea from Infinite Text sent me this because, well, I think it was right after Le Guin passed away, and I must have said something about how I never got to meet Le Guin and I didn't have any books signed by her. So Andrea found this signed copy, which is one of the nicest things somebody has ever done for me. Another essay collection, Cheek by Jowl. This is truly excellent and contains some of the essays that Le Guin wrote about kind of why fantasy matters and why writing for children matters and stuff, and it's so, so good. And lastly, I have 2 books that Guin didn't write, but which are essentially about her and interviews with her. This first one is Conversations on Writing with David Naiman. And the last one is Ursula K. Le Guin, The Last Interview and Other Conversations, edited by David Streitfeld. Now moving on to the books by Diana Wynne Jones. Jones was probably one of the most important authors I read when I was a child. I loved her books so much. And I have an almost complete collection of all of her novels. I think she wrote a first fantasy novel that is no longer in print, and nobody ever says anything about it. And I think she also wrote a couple of like picture books, storybooks, and I have never read those, and I've never seen them for sale either. But for her middle grade and young adult novels, as well as a couple of adult novels, I own all of them. So these 4 books are the Dalemark Quartet, Cart and Quitter, Drowned Amet, The Spellcoats, and The Crown of Dalemark. Next is Dark Lord of Dirkholm and its sequel, Year of the Griffin. I thought these books were hilarious, and I think they may have either been the inspiration for her Tough Guide to Fantasyland, or she wrote them after Tough Guide to Fantasyland, because they are definitely riffing on tropes of the fantasy genre and like quest storylines and stuff, and it's a wonderful, funny send-up. Fire and Hemlock. I think this is one of 2 Tam Lin retellings that Jones wrote. I think it was also one of the last books I read by her, and I thought it was all right. Hexwood. This may be the other Tam Lin retelling, but I don't actually remember anything about the book. Unexpected Magic, a short story collection. The Homeward Bounders. Dog's Body. And A Sudden Wild Magic. This is one of the 3 adult novels that Jones ever wrote. It's set in the same world as Deep Secret, but it is a far inferior book to Deep Secret. A Tale of Time City, and as you may see, I seem to pick up a lot of books that have introductions or blurbs by Le Guin on the cover. The Ogre Downstairs, Power of 3, The Game, The Time of the Ghost, Witch's Business, Archer's Goon. For some reason I still have this really terrible edition that had like a nail put through it at one point. I really need to get a better version. 8 Days of Luke, Enchanted Glass, Howl's Moving Castle, and the 2 companion novels to Howl's Moving Castle are Castle in the Air and House of Many Ways. The Merlin Conspiracy, Reflections on the Magic of Writing, which is a collection of essays and such. The Islands of Chaldea, which was Jones's final novel. It was unfinished when she passed away and it was completed by her sister. I don't think it's a particularly outstanding book, but the completion of it was pretty seamless. Deep Secret is another one of her rare adult novels and is one of my favorite books by her. The first book of the Crestomancy series is The Lives of Christopher Chant, then Conrad's Fate, Charmed Life, Witch Week, Mixed Magics, a story collection, The Magicians of Caprona, and lastly, The Pinho Egg. And the last book for this bookcase is The Tough Guide to Fantasyland, which is kind of Jones making fun of all of the tropes and cliches of the fantasy genre and such. It's also a really fun read. Alright, now we're back in my office, and I have basically 2 shelves of unread books to go over. So these first 3 are ones that I've started reading but are kind of on hold for the moment. So we have The Invisible Valley by Sue Wei, Neveriona by Samuel R. Delany, and Coriolanus by William Shakespeare. Then we have Landscaping with Herbs by Nancy Ondra. I may not actually read this one, but I'm just getting ready to look at it to see if I want to add it to my reference collection. Into the Green by Charles DeLint. This is one of the very, very brilliant SF Gateway omnibuses. This one is for Pat Cadigan. I haven't read Tea from an Empty Cup or Mind Players, but I have read Fools. And this SF Gateway Omnibus, I haven't read anything in it. These are 3 books by Sherry S. Tepper, After Long Silence, Shadow's End, and Six Moon Dance. The Found and the Lost, the collected novellas of Ursula K. Le Guin. I have read almost everything in here in other collections, but I wanted to read it from cover to cover just because why not? But also, if I read the whole thing, I'll probably let myself buy the matching edition from Saga Press of The Unreal and the Real. The Big Book of Science Fiction, edited by Anne and Jeff Vandermeer. This is a humongous anthology, and you can see I have a bookmark in this. I was going to read a story per day to finish it off in 2019. That did not happen. I don't think this is an anthology that I will actually read cover to cover. I think I will cherry pick stories and then take it off of my TBR shelf because it's so massive, guys. I kind of wish that I'd gotten it on ebook because that would have been less intimidating. The Stone and the Skull by Elizabeth Bear. This is the first in a new series in the same world but a different time from, was it the Eternal Sky trilogy? I can never remember the name of that one. But anyway, I've also started reading this one. I got a couple chapters into it and then paused it. The Collected Fiction of Elena Crone. This contains some novels as well as excerpts and short stories. I've read 2 or 3 of the novels and a couple of the stories, and I will eventually finish it up. I do absolutely love the design of this book. It is such a beautiful blue color. Armistice by Laura Elena Donnelly. The Family Tree and Gibbon's Decline and Fall by Sherry S. Tepper. Middle Game by Shannon McGuire. Midnight Never Come by Marie Brennan. This is another one that I've also started reading and paused. Sisters of the Revolution, a feminist speculative fiction anthology edited by Anne and Jeff Vandermeer. Terra Nullius by Claire G. Coleman. In Gathering, The Complete People Stories by Zena Henderson. 500 Years After, The Paths of the Dead and Sethra Lavode by Stephen Brust. These are 3 books in the Kavrin romances, or maybe the Adralanka series, I can't remember, which is the same universe as his Vlad Taltos novels. Sunspot Jungle, Volume 1, edited by Bill Campbell. This is another one. I am a good third of the way through this, and I just have it paused for right now. And this is Volume 2 of Sunspot Jungle. Both of these have really excellent covers. They're the Kickstarter hardcover editions. The Collected Short Fiction of C.J. Cherry. I was so excited when I found this. For a long time, I did not know that Cherry wrote short fiction at all, and then I thought this was out of print. So I stumbled upon it in half-price books, I think, and was like, oh my god, the find of the year. Never Stop, Finnish Science Fiction and Fantasy Stories, selected by Emmy Itaranta. Main Line by Deborah Taramis Christian. The Rift by Nina Allen. And very last on my unread shelf are all of the SF Masterworks and Fantasy Masterworks I own but I haven't read, which is shameful. This first one is The City in the Stars by Arthur C. Clarke. The Continuous Catherine Mortenhoe by D.G. Compton. Swastika Night by Murray Constantine. I have read the introduction to this twice now, I think, and it sounds like a book that'll probably make me throw up when I read it. It's all about fascism and terrible, terrible misogyny, and I will get through it at some point. It's one of the SF Masterworks written by a woman. Her real name was Catherine Burdekin. Engine Summer by John Crowley. The Doomed City by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. Dying of the Light by George R.R. Martin. Native Tongue by Suzette Hayden Elgin. Land Under England by Joseph O'Neill. More Than Human by Theodore Sturgeon. Last Call by Tim Powers. Expiration Date, Earthquake Weather. And lastly, The Dragon Grial by Lucius Shepard. And lastly, here at the very bottom, I have 2 shelves in one of these cabinets full of my reference books. This is very whittled down. A couple of years ago, I just slashed this collection in half. I used to have the whole other cabinet with 2 more shelves also full of books. These are mainly dictionaries, encyclopedias, reference manuals, old textbooks, a bunch of things from my thesis work, I think, and then some things that are actually like genuinely good reading. So I'll pull some of them up to show them to you. When I was a kid, I really loved other languages. I wasn't necessarily good at learning foreign languages, but I really loved just looking at other vocabularies and grammars and stuff. And somewhere along the line, I got this concise dictionary of 26 languages and simultaneous translations. And it's probably not very good, but it was very interesting when I was like 12. Content Strategy at Work by Margot Blumstein. I loved reading this. I still have a couple of baby name books from back when I wrote fiction and was very interested in creating fictional genealogies, because that's a normal thing that children do. The Blackwell Encyclopedia of Writing Systems by Florian Kuhlmus. Once again, I was very interested in writing systems and languages and conlangs and such. Apparently I still have this kid's knitting book. I completely forgotten about this. I should probably take a look at it. Another content strategy book. This is Content Strategy for the Web, 2nd edition by Christina Halverson and Melissa Roch. Clout, The Art and Science of Influential Web Content by Colleen Jones. I want to say that this was kind of like a precursor book to content strategy in a way. I really liked it at the time. The Writer's Digest Character Naming Source Book by Sherilyn Kenyon. Once again, I was very into naming characters and writing fiction at one point. Shaping Information, The Rhetoric of Visual Conventions by Charles Kostelnik and Michael Hassett. This was a fascinating read. It really surprised me. I've kept 3 books by Peter Morville because, once again, they were really interesting reading at a certain point in my life. We have Ambient Findability. The concept of findability was a revelation to me at the time. I did a lot of web development work for a while. Also Information Architecture, which was like designing web navigation, something I had to read endlessly in grad school for my thesis. And then Search Patterns. Letting Go of the Words by Jenny Reddish. And yeah, Jenny Reddish is my hero. Egyptian Hieroglyphs for Everyone. My favorite book in this entire collection of reference books is this, probably the oldest book that I own. It's not in good shape at all. This is the Manual of Foreign Languages by, I think that's George F. von Osterman, the 4th edition. For a long time I thought I had the only copy of this on Library Thing, but I think like 3 or 4 other people have a copy now. And this book was fascinating. It gives actual examples of a bunch of writing scripts, how to pronounce in a bunch of languages, and the basics of grammar, how to count, all of that stuff. And this was, I think I used this on a daily basis when I was basically inventing languages on my own. Oh, it's so fun. I have to hang on to it. I have such good memories of using this. Content Everywhere by Sarah Wachter-Bocher. This is another content strategy book that was awesome. Another baby name book. The Non-Designer's Design Book. This is the 2nd edition. It's by Robin Williams, but not that Robin Williams. This is a fantastic book. Get this, get one of the updated editions if you do any desktop publishing or basic design work. This is invaluable. Everything I know about essentially document design, I learned from this book. Information Architecture by Christina Watke and Austin Gavella. This is another book that I read repeatedly when I was working on my thesis. It was also quite good at the time. And everything else down here to show you are my A Book Apart books. I don't have all of them, though it's tempting to get all of them because they are numbered. And they're really well put together books. You know, I love the color-coded thing and how all of them are formatted the same. It's so good. This first one is HTML5 for Web Designers by Jeremy Keith, which I'm sure is outdated by now. Number 2 is CSS3 for Web Designers by Dan Cederholm. Once again, probably out of date now, but you know, I keep it because it's pretty. 3 is The Elements of Content Strategy by Aaron Kassane. This book rocked my world. Number 4 is Responsive Web Design by Ethan Marcotte. Number 5 is Designing for Emotion by Aaron Walter. I think he's the guy who used to work at MailChimp, and a lot of stuff in here is about MailChimp, which I thought had fantastic design for a long time. Then they changed everything, like their branding, and it's ugly now. Number 6 is Mobile First by Luke Robluski. Number 8, Content Strategy for Mobile by Karen McGrain. Number 9, Just Enough Research by Erica Hall. 10 SAS for Web Designers by Dan Cederholm. On Web Typography by Jason Santamaria. This is another of the really good books in this line. 13 is Responsible Responsive Design by Scott Geel. Then you can tell I started moving out of the web dev area and I didn't buy quite so many of these, but number 18 is Design for Real Life by Eric Meyer and Sarah Wachter-Bocher. Number 20 is JavaScript for Web Designers by Matt Marquis. And the last one that I have is number 21, Demystifying Public Speaking by Laura Hogan. And I think that is the end of this bookshelf tour. That's pretty much everything. It is very late. You might be able to tell I'm very tired right now. So yeah, thank you for following along with this rather self-indulgent bookshelf tour. I have a lot of fun going through all of my books one by one. It's kind of like rediscovering them when you finally like pull them out and touch them again. It's good to do that occasionally. So yeah, thank you for watching. Leave me any comments if you have questions, and until next time, bye.